Welcome to the Leftover Rewatch. We're on the third episode and maybe one of my favorite episodes of the series, or at least season one. Two boats. Is it two boats and a helicopter?
Yep.
So how's it going, guys?
Excellent. Thank you.
Great. This is not the Ten Commandments podcast?
No.
Oh.
No, we have 15. We have 15 commandments, as Mel Brooks had planned.
Right.
But if you've never seen History of the World Part 1, then you don't know what I'm talking about. But anyway, I asked you how it's going. You guys said great. And we have Rose in the chat. So we start off this episode. Matt is giving a sermon, and the GRs are stalking him. It's like they're just smoking, and the one looked pretty like she had been smoking a long time. I'm just going to say it. Not to criticize smokers out there, but she looked like she had been smoking like 24/7. She just had that look like, okay, it's cold outside. I'm smoking. It's not a lot of fun. And he's talking about a girl in a coma named Emily in a coma. And the house is packed. He's got a packed house there, right? About 8 people. Counting Mary.
Quite, but yeah.
Then a big guy walks in and just beats the snot out of him. None of the 8 people. Well, could they really have stopped him? He's a pretty big guy.
Well, there was that one guy, Jack, that you referred to in the original podcast who looked like he was calling the cops, but that's about it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think it's important to point out that he also told the story of him as a child getting diagnosed with cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
He's had a rough life, would we say?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's had a lot of tragedies.
He's had some tragedies, yeah.
But the guy beating him up has a piece of one of Matt's pamphlets that says she sold drugs, and he shoves it in his mouth. And so, do we defend this guy? Is he? I mean, we're not advocating violence here, but can you see everything that's happened in this last 3 years in the Leftovers, where you're mourning the loss of your wife, and I'm assuming it was his wife. Can you see his frustration? I mean, obviously, we're not saying go beat someone up. But do we understand it?
I think they make it pretty clear in the episode that this happens a lot to Matt.
Yeah.
And he kind of has it coming. And Caleb had a point, and we were talking about it before the episode. Matt's a jerk like the whole time. I mean, kind of.
Yeah.
I would also say that Caleb, in another episode, I think the first episode, you made the comparison between the GR and Westboro Baptist Church. I mean, in many ways, what he's doing is much more closer to a Westboro Baptist Church.
Oh, that's true. Good point.
What Matt is doing?
Absolutely, that he's publicly like trying to shame people who've departed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
exactly. I think that his speech at the beginning was really interesting because I think ultimately he decided that he was punished, and he's so fearful and motivated by fear after getting cancer from praying to God to get attention. So I think that's made him believe in a more fearful, wrathful God already just in the first place, starting out as a character. So that's interesting.
Well, you would know. That's a pre-show comment.
Oh.
Anyway, the woman that was selling drugs was Amber Johnson. Then we go to the hospital, and then some guy's interrogating him. Kevin walks in, and he goes, "You got to stop pissing people off, Matt."
What I loved about the scene is it's almost like you see it totally. It's almost like Kevin's obviously the main character of the show, but he walks in like a side character, right? He has like 2 minutes there, and you see Kevin like from a totally different light.
Right.
And that's what jumped out at me. And it's like the way that he's like, doesn't he invite him over for dinner?
Yeah, for steaks and family dinner, because I guess it's something they used to do all the time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we're slowly starting to learn that there's this much more to this relationship that Matt has with the Garvey family. This close relationship, and I think it's really important to point out that this is the first POV episode, which is kind of what the show is known for, of the whole series, where we just follow one person the whole time. But so yeah, we learn a lot more about him. Like knows the Garvey.
Yeah, because the first 2 episodes we see Matt, but he's not really a main character, we'd say at that point. Whereas this episode, it's Matt.
Yeah.
I like how he gets in the elevator and there's the clown. He
Yeah.
goes, I guess we're going to the same place. And I like how he goes into the room and the orderly is just, I'm assuming it's orderly. He's kind of a jerk, would we say, to Matt? I mean, Matt just asking questions. Oh, what happened? And he goes, oh, we had prayed for her to come because the girl that they were praying for came out of her coma. She asked for a Sprite. And he goes, yeah, it's good. Great. She came out of it last night.
Yeah. Before you were prayed for. So, I mean, this episode, we're constantly just getting Matt like punched in the gut, like over and over again. And, you know, the Job thing will come later, but there's lots of that there.
But do you think the guy was a jerk, or is it's just going back to the nature of what's happened the last 3 years? Some people just, I don't want to hear about God. I don't want to hear about this. I don't want to hear about that. You know, just no.
I chalked it up to the guy doing his job and just not being sensitive to other people.
I did think it was funny though.
I'd like to point out that, you know, you said he got on the elevator with a clown, and they said, he said, I guess we're going to the same place, which is interesting because they're both will end up going back to the hospital. So they technically do, do that. But just wanted to point that.
Are people beating up the clown? Is that, or is the clown just there to cheer people up?
It's like a clown, probably, to cheer people up.
Are you saying all clowns go to hell and they're both going down? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying all clowns go to the hospital to cheer people up.
Clowns have it used to be, when I was a kid, we liked clowns. And something happened. Something changed where people just hate clowns now. I don't get it.
Pennywise.
Stephen King, yeah, man.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
But I do want to talk about that. How when Matt does show up at the hospital, like you said, about he said, we prayed for her, and it was the night before. But it really reminded me of like today's version of like thoughts and prayers. Like he really thought he was doing something good. Like in his mind, he really thought that what he was doing was enough of an action, if you will, to help, this girl. And so looking at it in that way, I think is interesting.
Yeah, and there's way more to say about that, like afterwards of Matt's whole arc. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Are you having technical problems?
Yeah, my headphones are going in and out, but go ahead. I don't want to go back and reprogram. There we go. Sorry about that, people.
I do want to point out that this, since I have a second, this episode was directed by Keith Gordon. And if anyone knows who he is, just by his name, did anyone see the movie Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield?
I did.
A long time ago.
The main kid in that was his son.
Oh, really?
That's Keith Gordon. He was also in Legend of Billie Jean, which is a legendary movie in my house. Wasn't
he also in the movie? What was the car movie? A Stephen King movie? Christine.
Christine, yeah, totally interesting. Yep.
That's what happened to him. He just gave up acting. Is now behind the scenes.
He's got tons of credits.
Huh.
Yep.
I did not know that.
Yep.
I didn't know the name. That's that guy from Back to School.
That's what you get at Claudia's House of Useless Knowledge. That one in a row. Okay.
Nice. We go back. Grant's cleaning up the church. He's doing all this stuff. Some guy knocks on the door. He wants his child baptized because, the wife doesn't. And he gives Matt some information about a poor gambler who would gamble away his paycheck every 2 weeks, and also his kid's future. His kids' kids' savings that he'd been putting away. But technically, does it belong to the kids, or is it still his? Because
that's what you said last time too.
Because it still bothers me.
You were talking about that for 5 minutes straight on the original podcast.
Well, it's a serious question. I mean, obviously, if you're saving for your kids, you should save for your kids. And obviously, what he was doing was 100% wrong.
I think what they're implying from a financial advisory standpoint was that there was some sort of educational savings account for his kids, which then he, as the trustee, forced a withdrawal from.
Right.
And it's unclear if the kid's college savings came out of his paycheck or might have been given to him by a grandparent or something like that.
Ah.
And I'll give you some numbers. You guys are Lost fans. You like numbers? 529. That's a number.
Right.
I know Eckhart gets it.
Does that add up to 108?
No, it's a 529 savings plan for education.
Yeah.
If you add up 529, it equals 16, though. So
But
go.
that scene is super important because it shows like the two sides of Matt. Like first, the guy offers to pay him, right, and that's what Matt really needs. What we find out later on in the episode, but like then the guy offers him like the dirt, and Matt's eyes light up, and you can see that this is what's driving him every day. And he's so detached from the realities and the necessities of life that he's just on that zealous crusade.
And what kind of guy, what kind of S-heel is this guy that he's going behind his wife's back to baptize their child? That's a violation amongst couples in many respects, I think.
Well, it happened in All in the Family, so I think it was okay.
Well, Archie Bunker did everything first.
Right.
Do you think that's more of a betrayal than leaving your family to join a cult? Because it's absolutely not.
No. Now we're getting into some.
Well, I'll say that if the wife is not a believer, is it hurting the child that the husband went and baptized him?
No.
If she is fervent that she doesn't want her child baptized, but we don't know that.
We don't know that. It's not.
Sure.
It's not mentioned. He says she's at the boutique or something, right?
Right.
Again, I wouldn't do it.
It seems like he doesn't want that. His wife is just kind of like peaced out, with the church, and just kind of like that's not on her radar anymore. She doesn't. That's not her thing, and I think that's all it was.
Wayne in the chat said this episode got me fully hooked on the Leftovers. Absolutely brilliant. I agree. It's what really started selling me too. Again, I wouldn't do what he did. I wouldn't do that to my wife. I wouldn't go behind her back and baptize. When you're raising kids, it should be you're raising them together and agree.
But this is a different world. So how can we judge him for doing that through the lenses of this world?
Because that's what I wanted. Because I want to judge him.
Yes. It's what I do best. Don't make me stop. Anyway.
and then Matt says to the casino boss, he goes, he just wants to separate the innocent from the guilty. That's his whole thing behind it. He tells about the guy that he goes, ask him, did you lose anyone important? And he says, my niece. And he talks about a child rapist and murderer who departed.
He explains it really well to the guy too. I mean, he lays out what he's doing pretty well to the guy.
Right.
I would also add one thing that's great about this scene is you can see that part of Matt's personality is he can be because he's so zealous, he can also be persuasive. And it works on some people, like this pit boss, but we'll see later on in the episode, it doesn't work on other people.
No. We see the second pigeon. He sees pigeon on the table, the roulette table, because earlier we see Matt shooing away, almost hitting the pigeon with a broom, right? Kind of pushing the pigeon out of the church. So is that a sign?
He's John Locke. He thinks everything's a sign.
So I have two things on this, one for now and one for later. I found this. I did something on the internet with the Google machine, and I found this paragraph. Are birds spiritual messengers? In a lot of spiritual traditions, birds have been regarded as spiritual messengers and act as a link between the spiritual realm and the being of our earthly realm of being. They bring us messages, warnings, motivation, solace, and guide us forward on our spiritual journey. So maybe
I know people say if you see a cardinal, that's your loved one checking someone who's passed, a loved one checking up on you.
Didn't Caesar see a bird land on the 15th of something? I don't know. Maybe mixing the metaphors, but
I don't know.
Yeah.
Then Matt talks to the GR. He offers them a comforter. He says, "Sorry, it's not white." Right, and that's when I noticed the woman that she looked miserable. She just looked like she had had enough.
who was it who mentioned it in the chat? Laura, about there were so many reveals and ups and downs in this episode. I think that was further shown by the contrast of white and black, with the guilty remnant being in all white and Matt always being in all black.
Oh, good
And
point.
traditionally, the white is going to represent, good, and the black's going to represent evil, obviously. But here, as we've seen so far, in our eyes as viewers, what we think we would label the guilty remnant. We would think of them more as a black, in terms of the contrast like that. So I think that's really interesting that they did it not only with the writing, but with the semiotics and the colors in the show.
Is a good point. I didn't catch that either.
But Lost always did that, so I think that's why. The white and the black theme.
So Matt's at the bank. He's talking to Jim Lewis, and he says, "Look, you got to come up with $135,001 before tomorrow. Cash. Can't be a check. Can't be anything, or the church will be sold to another buyer."
What I really liked about this scene, and first of all, I thought it was, it's pretty it's a very common event, right? Somebody going through foreclosure, but it was just acted so well.
Right.
And the fact that we know for a fact that this banker was only in this one episode, but they got somebody to play the small town banker to the T.
Yeah.
Which shows how much attention to detail the showrunners paid to everything.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I noticed too, even when he wasn't saying anything, this actor was just, his look was like, okay, I'm hurting a friend. Mm-hmm. I don't want to do this to you, Matt, but I have a job to do. It's you could tell he was hurt. So I agree with you. Fantastic acting.
Do you guys think that he knew at this point it was the GR? Because he acted like he did not know it was the GR at this point. He said it was
the banker?
Yeah. Right now he's acting like it's a hedge fund or something.
Maybe he didn't, because probably the GR doesn't. They probably have someone buying their stuff.
Yeah, I did believe the actor, but I thought about it.
I was thinking about that too, but the thing that I was thinking about is that it didn't really matter. It was just the whole notion that he knew that Matt, who had inherited this property from his parents,
right,
was probably going to lose it,
right,
and there was nothing he could do about it.
Right. Laura asked, why did it have to be cash, where checks and credit cards not being used anymore? I think it's because it was in foreclosure, and he only had 24 hours to get the money. So a check that may not be good, checks have to clear, all that stuff. It had to be cash because it had to be done by a certain time.
And I'm sure a cashier's check would have worked. Because when they say cash, they mean you need to have the money. It can't be on credit.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought it was great. But then he goes to Nora's house, and we find out they're brother and sister. He asks Nora for the money because, she has a settlement fund. And she says, sure, only if you stop with your papers, if you stop harassing people. And he's like, but I'm doing that. I'm doing good. I can't do that. I thought it was obviously great acting between the two actors. But I didn't like when he tells Nora that his husband was cheating on her. I probably said that at the time of the podcast, but I just it bothered me then. It bothers me now. Because what he at
why
this
now?
Seems like it just seems like now he's trying to hurt her.
Yep.
Yeah.
And my note was this sibling stuff can jump off just like that. Welcome to the series, Carrie Coon, basically, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. I just didn't like it because you can tell she kind of laughs, but then you can tell it hurt her. I mean, she's been through so much. And Matt's he comes across, I think you said a jerk, Caleb, but he comes to me as that person that thinks his problems are worse than everybody else's and he's better than everybody else, I guess, or more pure, or whatever the word I'm looking for. And
he thinks his way is right. His belief is right.
Yeah,
above all else, and that's
Right.
his defining character.
And let's face it, like if he wasn't doing this thing with the Flyers and he was actually being a better minister or reverend or whatever, he'd probably have more parishioners in this time of great doubt after the sudden departure.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So he's totally lost his way with his parishioners, and so of course the church is failing no matter what.
But in the flip side of that, he is himself is also clinging to hope by continuing to have the church, even with such few parishioners, as you said. So there's this episode has so many layers to it.
Rose says, I don't think he was trying to hurt her. I think he wanted her to realize why he was doing what he was doing. I think that's right, but he did hurt her. And I thought it was a pretty crappy thing to say.
I mean, my take on that is, and I think Ethan was hinting at this with the whole sibling relationship, is he needed her help. She made it conditional. He was upset that she's trying to stop him doing the thing that he thinks is so important. So that his response is almost like, you can see it's like almost subconscious, right?
Right.
That there is some sort, on a subconscious level, he's trying to basically hit back because he was obviously very hurt by her telling him to stop doing that.
Well, I think she's telling him to stop doing it because he's going to get killed.
Of course, but he's a zealot.
Yeah.
And I forgot if it was Ethan or Caleb who said it, probably both. It was in the last 5 minutes. It says like his main thing is, outing these people.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's what he spends all his time on. That's what he spends all his money on.
Yeah.
So when he tells Nora, his sister, that his wife was cheating on her for like however long and that he has receipts, first of all, why now? Why is he telling her now? Second of all, is that supposed to make her feel better or worse? And third of all, I feel like he used that information to try to get what he wants, which is like a manipulative thing that's not Christ-like. Going back to that, so,
Right.
If he thought about it for 2 seconds and he didn't do it out of pure anger, he would have known that you don't double down to get what you want that way.
Right.
So I think it was a snap decision made in anger to hurt her.
Well,
But-
Ethan, you'd said, go ahead.
Well, two things. First of all, we learn later on in the episode that all he does is double down.
Yeah.
But the other thing too is, and I just thought about this as we're talking through this, like if his major thing is outing people, right? It's almost like maybe on some subconscious level, he told Nora that he knows this, and he's showing to her in his twisted way that he loves her so much that he never outed her, right?
He won't publish a paper on her.
Yeah, that is a good point. Yeah. Yeah,
like, to
well, he
prove
does
his
say
love
that,
to
yeah.
her, like that he didn't out her, right? Even though he's outed like all these other people.
Well, you were saying, I think, Caleb, or Ethan, you were saying that he would have more parishioners if he wasn't being so, does he need obviously the church is from his parents, but does he need the church to do what he's doing? I mean, obviously no one's coming to the church. So all he needs is a copier and a computer. Does he?
No,
he's not really doing, in my opinion, what I think of the Lord's work, where at this time people need to be brought together. I would think he's splitting people further apart by, like he showed, the guy comes in and beats him and it's not the first time. He's not bringing the community together. He's pulling them apart because he wants them. He's basically doing what the GR are doing. They have what they want done. He's doing what he wants to do instead of, if you're in my opinion, a true person of God, your job is to bring people together, especially when you've had something so traumatic that, I mean, obviously some people are just going to say, all right, I'm done. There's no God, all this different stuff. But some people are going to need it because that's their strength. That's their, makes them whole. Anyway,
I would say he's much more of and I hope this doesn't come across the wrong way. In the Christian tradition, he's much more of an Old Testament preacher that would basically be about passing judgment versus love thy neighbor like yourself.
right.
And I say that, and I think about like Leftovers does a great job of reaching into the past of different strands of Christian tradition, right? And I mean, there was obviously that. I'm thinking more like he's much more of a Cotton Mather, Puritan type of Christian minister than he is what you're thinking of, Jack, and kind of what you would hear in most sermons on a Sunday morning.
Right. I'm just saying, in this such a traumatic event, what he's doing is I don't know. But again, there's so many different religions and so many different.
But it also makes you wonder what he thinks of Nora's kids, his nieces and nephews.
Yeah.
If he has this flyer or, I'm going to use it, but I'm really not, and has this dirt on his sister's husband, and he's handing out flyers that everybody who departed or basically should have, aka went to hell or God took them, whatever he thinks.
Does he know about Kevin?
Say?
Does he know about Kevin cleaning the gutters?
I don't think Kevin has told anyone about that really, and no, he hasn't, and that's spoiler talk.
Okay, all right, just saying.
Okay.
So Matt goes back.
I thought I had a deep question, but okay.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I threw it.
I thought it was important, and you were like gutters again. And
no, but it was important. But I had to say it because it was in my head, and I didn't want to forget it.
Get your mind out of the gutter, Jack.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
Yeah, but basically, so when Nora's, like you said, she had this look on her face, like, did it make her feel better or worse? And in that moment, is she also thinking, well, if he thinks that of my husband, that doing that immediately makes him go to hell, then what is his rationale for my kids? And then that same question is posed when he gets to the casino, like you said, with the guys. Was it his niece also?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, and then that guy even said, you must get, I know now why you look like that,
Right.
And that
I didn't think about that. That is true. Like I said, if he thinks the husband should go to hell, then what about why did the kids? Why would the kids?
Yeah, I feel like it's really like they way tiptoe over it, but it's a very important thing. I have like ink on my hand. Sorry.
I want to answer Bill. No.
Okay. Can we actually
we
actually take a step back? I actually want to clarify something.
Okay.
What at this point in time, what do we think, or what do we know that what the motivation is for Matt to post all these? I mean, the simple answer I would think is that he's trying to prove that this was not the rapture, right?
Yes.
I think so, but I think I have. Well, just wait.
Well, the rest of the episode really just gets into that.
Okay, so we'll leave that for the post recap.
Right. Then we have he brings the bleach home for the caregiver needs, but she hasn't been paid. She's also watching a commercial that comes into play later. It's a spoiler, so I won't say anything, but it comes in later on in the series, right? The commercial she's watching, and she hasn't been paid in 3 weeks, but she's like, okay, I can't keep doing this, Matt. Da, 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 da. And then there's a really great scene where Matt, loving, caring Matt that we love and like, he's giving Mary a bath, and I thought it was a great scene. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, it's great, and it really shows what his daily, for lack of a better term, grind is.
Right.
You know what I mean? And yeah.
But then he has an idea, and he calls the caregiver's name was Roxanne to come back and watch Mary that night. I go, that takes a lot of balls, I would think, because she's already pissed, and now you're calling her in the middle of the night. But it also shows that she's, I think, a pretty caring person, that she would come back. Okay, I don't want you to leave Mary alone either. I'll come back. And he says, I got a plan. You're going to get paid. Everything's going to work out.
But he has this kind of breakdown in bed, and he looks at this painting, right?
Right.
Painting that I put in my background here.
Oh, it's disturbing.
It is. It's
the scene, not that by itself.
Yeah,
well, I mean, kind of
the whole thing. Yeah. Can I tell you guys about the painting really quick?
Yes.
It's Job on the dunghill and with his wife, by Albrecht Dürer. And it's Job is sitting on a dunghill. His wife pours a bucket of water on him. Perhaps she wanted to cool his body. that is covered in sore boils. The woman is dressed in cloths typical for Nuremberg, where the artist lived, and in the background, Job's burning house is visible. So, they're just hitting the Book of Job nail on the head. I can't speak at length with knowledge about the Book of Job, as I am the resident Jewish person. I think I am. Happy Passover.
Basically,
but
everything happened to him that was bad. Everything bad happened to him.
Yeah. And Nuremberg, where Maximilian Schell told us that Nazis were wrong. Anyway, that's all. I just thought it's important that he gets all this inspiration while looking at this painting of Job, who his story is supposed to parallel so closely.
He's suffering for the Lord. Yes.
Yes.
And that's what I wrote in my notes. But yeah, he's willingly doing so with the flyers, knowing that it's going to cause him suffering or whatever. But he's doing it for the Lord out of fear from the story he told at the beginning of the episode that was about himself.
Yeah, and I think this is the dream is interesting in that, I mean, it really does show the second half of his childhood, right? Where it's implying that he burnt down the parents' house, right?
We're not at the dream yet, are we?
Oh, we're not at the dream? Isn't that about to happen? Okay.
No.
Sorry.
Later.
Now, I know you want to speed up the recap, but that's
sorry. No. I thought this happened.
Sorry if I mentioned that.
No, it's fine. Matt goes to the Garvey's house, and Lori is sitting on the swing. F you, Lori.
And she is, and that's kind of crazy. She's
Yeah.
hanging out, right?
Yeah, and then Matt sees her, and he talks to her, and she goes, "Don't tell him I was here, as long as you don't tell me I was here." And then Matt, because Kevin's dad left Matt some cash underneath the barbecue, he digs it up. It's in a Jiffy peanut butter jar, and he takes the money. And he's, but then as he's driving back, he sees pigeons on top of a traffic light.
Now, was his idea to go to the casino from the birds, or was that his vision before? Was that his idea? I guess that must have been his idea when he woke up from.
I think he was gonna. I think it was just a vision, and then the pigeons confirmed that he needed to go to that table and make those bets.
Reading signs.
Matt goes to the casino, gets $20,000 in cash. $20,000 in cash. He puts $20,000 on red. And was anyone nervous watching this?
Yeah.
The way they shot it. I mean, I thought it was so. I'm like going, and I knew what I remember he wins, but I'm like going, I was stressing every time,
Well, that's how you know how good the show is. Like, even if you know what's going to happen, you still get as nervous as the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it lands on red, number 3. And he goes, let it roll. Then he wins again. Let it roll. And plus he had to get permission because that was the higher tables were in the back. He says, please, can I use this table? And the pit boss goes, yeah, sure. Okay, you can use this. But then Tina, when he goes for his final bet, she bets against him. Yes, 23, one of the numbers, Bill. But Tina bets against him, and the guy says, don't bet against a guy like that. He goes, he's bound to lose. The odds are. And if you ever watch roulette, I can remember playing different games and stuff, and you'd see like 9 straight, like black, 9 straight red. We'd send someone over and go, okay, put it on the opposite. If we were sitting like playing blackjack or something, just try and win. Anyway, because it's not normal that happens over and over again. But he wins $160K.
I really think it's important to point out when he goes to get the chips, right? She asks what denomination, and his answer is doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Kind of a religious thing there.
Oh,
good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good job. I just thought he didn't know how to gamble. But then he's in the parking lot and he starts the car. He's got $160,000 in cash. I don't know how far he parked away from this casino. He was like miles away. He's like the end of the parking lot. And the guy there says, hey, we lost her. Can you give me, gas is expensive. They're going to, where were they going? Atlantic City? Niagara Falls. And he goes, yeah, I'll give you $200. He goes, no, I want. So he takes Matt out. He beats Matt up. And Matt, you're thinking, oh my God, you're going to lose $160,000. But not Matt. Matt gets up and just pounds the guy and hits his head, 4 times into the ground? Now,
It's one of the numbers.
Yeah, exactly. Do we know if he killed him or not?
We don't know, but
no. Oh.
I think
I don't think so.
I don't think he did, but it left it to your imagination.
I don't know. It just was kind of a crazy scene. But again, if I've won $160,000, I'm getting in my car and driving away as fast as I can. And I'm not going to sit there and go, "Oh, this is great." This is.
Why isn't the casino? And I definitely heard this on somebody else's podcast. Why isn't the casino sending out a security guard with him to his car or something like that? It's absolutely ridiculous.
That's what Jack said.
He departed.
Security guard?
Well, it does make sense. You know, or say, you know, can you go get my car or something like that? Anyway,
So he's like almost like deadly sins, you know, to get this money for the church, beating people up, gambling, manipulating people, whatever. And then I feel like his downfall is when he goes to take out revenge and stops to get the sign of the judge, to take the street sign off.
Right. But the whole episode, after he wins the money, the whole time we're thinking, oh, he's going to lose the money. He's gonna lose the money the way, but it didn't really matter at this point. You just mentioned he takes off the street signs, and then
but it's all to the captain and to Neil. Okay, so it goes from this scene of incredible violence to the captain and to Neil saying, "Love will keep us together." And
Matt had some of the best songs in his episodes.
Once again, it's doing the episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some of the best songs are in Matt's episodes. The one where, I don't want to spoil anyone. Then he's driving to the bank, and a GR gets hit with a rock, and the people in the Jeep come back and hit Matt in the head with a rock.
Great.
That's when he goes into the dream. Because he is as much of a jerk as Matt is, he sees someone get hit in the head, and it's the GR who he obviously doesn't get along with. And he still stopped. He did the right thing. He stopped to get out to help them.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because up to this point in time, he doesn't show the same amount of animosity towards them as everyone else does.
No.
It's almost like, what do they say about con men? They say two fishermen can recognize each other from a distance, right? In the sense that, like, he might even, like, not respect them, but acknowledge the fact that they're playing a similar game, right?
Right.
And he thinks they're trying to get him to become a member.
Right.
Yeah, he was helping them out by giving them clothes earlier. So it's another ironic betrayal later, you know, at the end. But
yeah, Ethan, that's an important point because the way that he reacts to that is like, I'm sorry that I won't join you guys. Just, you know, tell Patty, you know, she shouldn't waste her time on me. Go get someone else. He doesn't tell them to F off, right?
No.
He's just kind of casual and professional about it, right?
Totally.
Because, but then I think maybe I'm wrong. The best part of the episode was Matt's dream.
Mm.
Am I wrong? Am I right?
Tell us what happened in the dream. I mean,
well, a lot was going on. But,
or do you want me to do it? You want me to do it real quick?
Yeah, go ahead and do it because I didn't write it. I just said Matt's dreaming.
He goes to the church and Gladys tells him they're all welcome. He follows himself and sees into the doctor's office when he's diagnosed with cancer. But with him as a man, we flash to his church's father while he is holding Nora's hand and telling her that, yes, her parents are in there while he looks at 2 firemen next to the painting not helping. Then cut to the departure and Mary's accident. We see the judge's car with no judge, but Mary is severely injured. He carries her and falls into bed with her making love. She asks, "Why do you persist?" Then flashes of Lori and Gladys and young Nora asking, why did you do anything? Maybe I got that wrong. He catches on fire and wakes up in the hospital.
Well, didn't he flash where it was actually having sex with Lori, right?
Yeah, and flashes of Lori and Gladys. Yeah. In a very Sopranos-y type of dream sequence. Yeah.
But you know, we see, and then Matt carries. You know, he carries. Wait a minute, I'm getting ahead of myself.
No, he carries Mary.
He carries Mary out. Someone help me! Someone help me!
Yeah.
this is why I think he does what he does.
Totally.
Because Mary is a victim of the departure, and I think he does it because of what happened to Mary.
Yeah, and the judge hit the car.
Right. Judge hit the car. And I think it's because of what all that stuff, and it's his anger of what happened to the love of his life. And he thinks she's an innocent person, and everything that's happened to her. That's why he does what he does.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't care.
Agree.
The problem is, if he gets himself killed, who's going to take care of Mary?
My mind is blown. I'm sorry. You're saying the car that hit them was the judge?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that stated explicitly
Um,
or specifically? Because I was under the impression that Matt hated the judge because Mary was in an accident on the day of the departure, and he probably wanted to get help for that, aka act of God happened, and they denied him that. That's why he's broke and can't afford a housekeeper and all that, because he's not getting any assistance, and this judge ruled against him, and so he had this vendetta against him. That's what I thought happened.
no, the judge departed. That's why the very first first flyer he made was about the judge.
Missed that.
Yeah, the very first flyer was wrapped in the money that Kevin Sr. left him, and it was about the judge. So the judge departed, and people were saying it was the rapture, and he had to prove that because he knew, I guess, that the judge was.
I don't know how I missed that. Oh well.
Aren't you glad you joined the podcast just to clear this up?
Yeah, the judge was gone. The judge departed at that.
Okay.
That's what I got.
All right, so it's interesting. So we have this one strand where he's upset at the judge because of the judge's departure led to Mary's condition, right?
Right.
Now we have him talking in the church about being the cancer survivor, right? Almost like implying that he was touched by God, right?
Right.
And then we have what we think is him burning down his parents' house. And it's unclear if he caused it or if it was an accident, but I think it's insinuated that he never actually admits to it, right?
Right.
Like there's a sense of guilt, right? Am I framing that incorrectly, Ethan?
Well, I'm not the authority. I can just, guess. I always thought that the major trauma there was not just the parents burning, but the fact of his answer to Nora.
Right.
Very, he didn't sugarcoat anything for his younger sister.
No.
Okay.
Because she says, "Can they feel it?"
And he's like, "Yeah, they can feel it."
Yes.
That's what I think. That's what I think that main trauma is. I never got the fact that he did anything to burn down the church.
I think one of the I'll tell you why I thought that is because I think Jack's crackpot theory that week was that we're going to find out that Matt burnt down his parents' house. Okay. But what I realized as I'm watching this, and I mean, okay, so Matt, this is the first character-centric episode, and this character always gets a lot of attention. So I'm kind of making note to myself that we should actually keep track of all these different, like, we'll call it like attributes, to see if by the end of the series we can actually figure this guy out, right?
Right. He's a complex character, like you
super complex.
Saying John Locke. I mean, it's similar.
Mm-hmm.
Then Matt wakes up in the hospital. He's like, he's got a bandage on his head. I got to get to the bank. And he's running around. He tells the nurse, "Call Jim Lewis. Tell him I'll be there. Tell him not to close." And I thought it was a great scene because you're thinking, okay, Matt's going to get there in time. He gets to the car. And I'm thinking, okay, the cash is going to be gone. The cash is still there. So you go, it's going to work out for Matt. He gets in. The guy lets him in, and he goes, "Well, that was 3 days ago." So he was knocked out for 3 days, Anyone feels sorry for Matt at that point?
I want to go back to something real quick about Matt's dream that I was trying to remember. you said that Matt tells Nora that the parents can feel it.
Mm-hmm.
Do we think that, I know you said that he could have burned down the house, but I don't think that that's probably the case. I think maybe it's more like he knew his parents were doing something that he thought was wrong or biblically wrong. And so maybe as punishment, the house did just burn down just to burn down, but maybe he was telling Nora, like, yes, they can feel it, as in they get what they get, kind of like what he's doing with the departured people. They deserved what they got.
Kind of like how he told Nora that her husband cheated on her.
Right. Because there's this pattern established that he does things out of fear, and that he believes this because a certain way due to the things that have happened to him. So.
And then Bill points out the chat. He rose on the third day. On the third day he rose again.
But 3 is not one of the numbers, so that's out.
No. Okay. And then he goes, but then he's the guy tells him, he doesn't really tell him Jim doesn't tell him who bought it. And at this point, though, I did write this down. I go, he's walking back to his church or whatever, but his church to find out who had bought it. I go, isn't he worried about Mary because he hasn't seen her in 3 days? Was it Roxanne? Is she there taking care of Mary? His main concern at this point is who bought the church, not Mary.
His whole concern, the whole episode, is the church and not Mary.
His whole character's concern is religion.
Yeah, but after 3 days, you think he'd go, Mary, what's wrong with Mary? You think there'd be something there, but it just.
And can we talk about why her name's Mary, or more importantly, was that a sign from God that that's who he should be with? Oh.
But Caleb,
are you saying no, Ethan?
Caleb, we have to correct you. Her name isn't Mary. It's Mary.
Mary. Then he sees that the GR had bought the church, and Patty and Matt just stare down each other. I thought that was a great ending without anything being said. Just two classic looks like, I want to kill you. And Patty's look is like, ha ha, screw you.
Yeah,
I win again.
You're insignificant.
Yeah. And that was the episode. And I got to say, it was a great episode.
It's a great episode. 2 boats and a helicopter. I posted a Twitter thing this week, which was the telling of that story, which doesn't come up in the episode from The West Wing when Carl Malden was on it, and he told the president. You guys know the story about the man in the raft who was a religious man, and there was a flood, and a boat came to save him, and he said, "No, God's going to save me. I'm a religious man." Another boat came, and the man said, "No, I'm a religious man. God's going to save me." And then a helicopter came to save the man. He didn't take it. He said, I pray God's going to save me. And then he dies. He drowns in the flood, and he gets up there to wherever there is, and God says, "I sent you 2 boats and a helicopter." God,
the man says, "Why didn't you help me?"
Yeah, why didn't you help me?
2 boats and a helicopter.
So that's where the name comes from. But yeah, it's a good episode.
Yeah, fantastic episode. Any other thoughts about the episode, or we want to move into spoilers? Or
let's do it. Spoilers.
All right, let's go into Ethan's spoiler section.
It's not too big, but we see the man who gets his child baptized. We see him later in Matt's house helping him print out flyers, so he can in fact run, everything he's doing outside of his house. So that guy is a new disciple or whatever you want to call it. Going back to the birds as spiritual messengers, this is a huge deal in season 2 and season 3. Birds play a huge part in the greatest season of television ever, which is the Leftovers season 2. That's a fact. I'll fight you guys later about that. And it's a huge part of International Assassin and the Book of Nora. Birds are all throughout this thing, so we can track the birds. just like Alfred Hitchcock.
Birds are the word.
The Loved Ones. We heard the first ad for the Loved One dolls,
Yeah.
right? And we know that comes into play way later in the first season, and
it's kind of freaky, but it's something that would really happen. There would be somebody out there doing that to make money, because they're obviously people would just, I don't know, but it's freaky. But I mean, I personally wouldn't want it, but that's just me.
But yeah, but it's like to make people feel safe. You know, they get into it later for sure.
Yeah, I know, but it's either way. I've always.
But you never know if like that happens and all of a sudden someone's gone. You might need that thing. People need to bury something, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
That's where it comes from.
I know. I get it, but I just.
Yeah. And the only last thing I have is a book thing with Lost. Everybody like to see what books were around and check them out and look for meaning. A book in Matt's house was called The Perforated Heart by Eric Bogosian. And an author finds his own notebooks and reads entries from himself as a young man. Perforated Heart explores two wholly different characters, a young ambitious artist and his older self, jaded by both success and failure, and creates an unforgettable portrait of two men who inhabit one individual. And, that might speak to Matt before the departure and Matt after the departure. Or everyone before the departure and everyone after the departure. And that's kind of it for, it's not really spoilers, but yeah.
But going back to Matt and the 160K, and we've bashed Matt a lot in this episode, but again, his wife needs 24-hour care.
Sure.
He had $20,000 at his disposal. But so why didn't he? Again, he cares more about outing people than he does his wife. Even though we see this lovely scene between his wife, giving his wife a bath, that he truly cares about her.
I think it was 40,000 actually.
Well, so when you live in fear of God that's going to punish you, and you do things based off of that, you're going to start not thinking clearly.
Right.
So I feel like Matt is just completely on this level of good versus bad in the world. And so when the departure happened, it completely shattered his notion, because that breaks up his religion of these people are good and these people, these are lost, these are saved, whatever. And so because of that, he's trying to restructure his own, religion in a way to make it fit. And through these actions, this is what he's trying to, accomplish.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, obviously, we've said it. I've said it 3 or 4 times this episode. This last 3 years have been, an incredible. Because even Nora says, "Well, can you tell me where they went?" And he says, "No, I can't."
And that's a good point, because he says, this was all a test.
Right.
And she's like, "Well, if it is, you're failing."
Yeah.
And I'm like, exactly. Yeah. So
I don't know. It's just, I forgot how much Matt was a jerk, in this episode. When it's been a while since I've seen it. God, I want to punch Matt.
I mean, there are a few bigger thoughts I had about this episode, and obviously, we at the time when we first watched it, we also compared it to Walkabout, right?
Right.
And obviously, the characters are similar, but this time when I watched it, I thought it was probably closer to in Watchmen, the Wade episode. Even though I realize Wade is much more charismatic and positive than both John Locke and Matt. But the other thing that I checked this time around, which I didn't obviously check the first time, is that Matt is a character that wasn't in the book. Okay. So what you see here is, and this is classic Lindelof, and this is why I also compared it to Wade, is he created this character, right? And added it into the source material. And often, like, the characters that Lindelof creates and adds to the source material are better than the source that he's working with.
Right.
So he's got like free reign, and that's why we probably have this as a very character-centric episode. And the last thing that I thought about when I was watching this, and especially the scene with Nora and Matt, is in some ways both of them are actually doing similar work but from different angles.
Right.
Which is they're both kind of trying to figure out find an answer for why they departed, right?
Right.
Nora does it in a much more bureaucratic way. She's working, she's collecting all these questions, but on some level, she's trying to figure out, like, why did her family depart? Where did they go, right? And Matt's trying to figure out the same thing, but in the sense he's trying to ask himself, it's like, why did some people go and some people stayed? He just does it in a much more offensive and negative way.
Like I said, I have no problem with Matt, calling out child rapists and murderers and stuff like that. But I think he has too wide of a net of people that he wants to call out, and I think that's what bothers me. That nobody is perfect. You're not going to find the perfect person. Even Matt is not a perfect person, so he's throwing stones at glass houses. All right, Matt, look in the mirror. You have a wife that needs 24-hour care, and you care more about everything else than you do your wife, who needs the care.
But I think Roxanne will get paid after tonight. So.
Yeah, I think Roxanne gets paid. Well, we don't know. Does he kill Roxanne? We don't know.
Now, I did start to mention a lot last week that I read the book and then not have any information from the book. So I actually ordered the book and I started listening to it again, but I started to listen to it from the middle because I do things like that. You're right. I was just going to confirm he's not in the book. That's all. And I started reading it again.
If you hadn't reordered the book, would you have known that he wasn't in the book? Would you remember that?
No.
Jack, if he had read the Wikipedia entry that I did, then he would have known.
You actually edited Wikipedia with it?
No, I didn't.
Oh, right.
But the point is that we're in agreement that this is in many ways the first Lindelofian character of the series here.
Right.
That he's got just clean slate.
And from that Justin Theroux interview that we were talking about, he said that Damon Lindelof was working through a lot of things because he lost his father recently before he made the show. And so, he definitely, I feel like he probably created the character so he could explore all the religious things that he was probably dealing with after that.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about when we first saw this episode, this was for many people the episode that really hooked them into Leftovers.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because
it's the first episode. I'll say for my I said I can't wait for next week.
But I have to be honest, watching it this time, it's still very good. But the episode we covered last week was phenomenal. Yeah, from a bigger picture. We don't even I'm still finding things in that last episode that I didn't find 3 weeks ago.
I'm finding it hard not to watch the next episode after I watch these.
Oh, I do.
I'm finding it really hard. Now we are. We're in a sandwich now. We're the white cream and an Oreo cookie of all the rated episodes in my mind and on IMDb. We're kind of on the same level that the episode before this and the episode after this are the lowest rated quality wise and writing wise episodes of The Leftovers. We're in the valley of The Leftovers right now, which is weird to say because it's so good.
Yeah, I wouldn't even look at those rankings because first of all, we don't know when they were ranked. If people ranked it when they first watched it or after they watched the whole thing. The way that we tackled the last episode with the toaster, I mean, to me, that was just we don't know if they intended to do that, but that became a major theme of dealing with, psychological breakdowns.
Oh, I think it was intentional. That's not a throwaway scene.
And I mean, that was where we got introduced to his dad.
Right.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it's like, I don't know why, if somebody thinks that the second episode of Leftovers season 1 is one of the worst episodes, that they don't know what they're talking about, right?
Well, I think the problem is, are they comparing it to seasons 2 and 3?
Well, yeah, I'm saying like of all the leftovers, like, I mean, it's like saying, I don't know, like the worst episode.
Because we've talked about it before, the problem is a lot of people just can't get through season 1. It's too depressing. Even this episode is depressing. I mean, it's nothing where you're going, oh yay!
And it ends very scary and very ominous.
And there was no shot of the twins. The twins weren't even in this episode. So
look, Caleb's gonna agree with me. We're doing this podcast for the leftovers, not the people that departed watching the episode. Okay? We are the leftovers for the leftovers, not for the departed. Right, Caleb?
Right.
There's the twins.
There's the twins.
There you go. There you go.
Nice.
But I mean, don't misinterpret what I'm saying. It's like I found an article that I'm going to read in 2 weeks of that episode, basically entitled "Why I'm Quitting the Leftovers Now."
Like I said, we're not here for the departed.
Yeah, but
Well, I know I can remember getting emails when we were podcasting. Sorry, guys, I stuck with Lost, but I can't do this show. Lindelof struck out, and it's just not Lost. That's because I think a lot of people thought it was going to be like Lost, which it is. I think it is like Lost, but a lot of people thought. I think they thought there'd be some happier moments.
But Jack, you know that was probably the subset of your Lost podcast listeners that also enjoyed Heroes. I mean, it's pretty obvious. I mean, that's not what Leftovers was for. I mean, it's a different show. It's a different.
I agree, but you always have those Lost fans, and I don't want to class, but there's some. They when they'd see an actor from Lost do something. Go, well, this is nothing like Lost. But they want to do other things.
So it's like most of us here who are discussing this, and look, I'm not trying to sound elitist or arrogant, but we're all in agreement that one of the greatest scenes of this last episode were the 2 bank scenes, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the reason why is that speaks to us in terms of the acting the scene, the same way that a lot of those flash sideways in the final season of Lost spoke to us in terms of it really allowed these people to act in these vignettes. And like they really, I don't want to say they pull at the heartstrings, but they really get to the emotional content of the scene.
Well, like you said, we talked about earlier, the actor they got to play Jim Lewis, not a big scene, but they didn't. I don't know if he's done other things. I mean, I didn't look it up, but he was fantastic in the role. And was he in there maybe a total of 3 minutes?
The pain on his face when he said, "I didn't want them to get it. We didn't want them to take it." Was phenomenal.
The sweat on his brow.
Nobody wanted them to get it. We were all pulling for you.
Yeah.
We called you, we did this, and you weren't answering the phone. I guess in this small town, no one say, "Hey, Matt's in the hospital," but that's it.
Well, it even goes into this theme that Caleb talks about a lot, what part of the first season is probably just to show like the fragmentation of society over time. Right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that if viewers are going to watch the show for the first time, or, because there's 28 episodes total. So it's not a big commitment, but like you need to know up front this departure happened, and like you're being dropped into a world that's 3 years later. It's all chaotic. It's a completely different world. Buckle up. I feel like they need to. They need that warning.
Well, that's why I say that Matt should be there trying to bring people together, not bring people apart. But I get the whole. He'd make him a boring character, but that's what I would expect someone from like Matt.
And I do think when I was first watching the series that I had to find something every week that would be like, okay, let's keep going. And this was a big level up in that. Do you know what I mean? And the biggest level up, is later on down the line in a couple episodes.
Well, it's the thing about the show is, I kind of made that comment about Heroes like as a it's a long-standing joke within this franchise. But
Right.
I mean, it is interesting in the sense that like the simplicity of one versus the complexity of Leftovers, in the sense that heroes, like, they keep drilling in like save the cheerleader, save the world. So it's almost like they're showing a path that everyone needs to follow every week. And here there's like absolutely no path, right? You're on your own. You need to figure out what's going on here. And by the way, the people in the story, they don't get it either, and they're going to tell you that at some point in time in season 2.
Well, I think Caleb said that's just the way the world is. I mean, they're portraying it on the screen as probably how it would be 3 years later. That there'd just be chaos and people not, like you look at Nora, that is a broken person. That is someone who is just, I mean, I don't know how you could lose your whole family without an answer. It's bad enough. I mean, it happens, obviously in the real world where, an accident and you lose your whole family, but not that it's easy, but at least you have an idea of, okay, as bad as it is, okay, I know what happened. Here she has no idea what happened. And then, her brother, oh, by the way, he was cheating with the your kid's preschool teacher.
What an asshole. I mean,
yeah, it's just like, Matt, come on, man.
I mean, I would kind of continue with this thought and think, so, when we're watching Lost and, they're, trying to figure out the island, get off the island, whatever, there's still some sort of a direction.
Right.
And here it's really, we're trying to see how these, and the characters on Lost are plenty complex, but we're really trying to see how these extremely nuanced, broken characters survive, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think it goes without saying that we all like have like an immense amount of like attachment and respect to almost every character in the show because we know what they've gone through, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's funny in that sense that, like, if I think about it, close my eyes and I think about all the characters on Leftovers and compare them to all the characters on Lost, like on average, I have just such a stronger attachment to the Leftovers characters for that simple reason.
And since we're so early in it, it's kind of evolving. Like right now, we've just seen Matt. So for the most part, probably Matt's everyone's favorite character because we kind of even know more about him than we do Kevin.
Exactly.
After this episode. And, that changes in episode 6. My favorite person becomes Nora in the entire season. And then in season 2, it's totally different. It's like Patty. Do you know what I mean? So,
yeah.
I mean, it's a great show. I love the Leftovers.
Yep. Anything else?
I love you too.
Well, that'll make me sleep tonight.
I would like to tell. Can we tell everyone that we are doing a special Easter show?
Yes.
Yes.
Easter show. And by special, I mean the next episode, just the one.
Yeah, we'll be back next week. I forgot next week was Easter. I apologize.
Well, I forgot this week was Passover, so I'm doing it next Saturday with my family.
Yeah.
Well, Ethan, just like Matt said, does it matter the denomination? No, because we're still going to podcast that night.
Yeah, right. It doesn't matter the denomination.
We already skipped our week.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
All right, so we'll be back next week. And what's the title of the episode?
The BJ and the AC.
Okay.
Got
it.
Next week for the BJ and the AC.
That's a nice Easter episode. There we go.
Yeah.
It's actually BJ and the AC, so it's not the BJ, which somehow makes it sound a little bit better, I think. BJ and the AC.
I really liked all the participation this week. Thanks for
in the chat.
Wow, that's a lot of comments. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was thinking BJ and the Bear. That's an old show, but anyway.
We can just review one of those if you want to.
I don't know how that show's still not on. Anyway, I'm just kidding. All right, guys. Thanks for everyone who joined us in the chat. This was a great discussion on a great episode, and we will be back next week for BJ and the AC. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.